The galaxy had never been kind to humans. They were not the strongest. They were not the longest living. They did not glow with energy or control ancient forces like many other species. In most interstellar councils, humans were tolerated, not respected. They were invited only because they were useful, good engineers, adaptable workers, and surprisingly brave when things went wrong. That was why the human delegation had been sent to Noctir. Noctir was a dark world that never saw a true sunrise. Its skies were thick with black clouds that reflected the faint red light of its dying star. It was ruled by a species known across the galaxy as the Bloodborne, often called vampire aliens by others. They fed on bioenergy, not blood, but their pale forms, sharp eyes, and long lives earned them their name. At their center ruled Queen Violia. She was ancient by human standards, feared by empires, and respected even by those who hated her. Entire star systems had bent their knees rather than face her fleets. Her people were powerful, disciplined, and terrifyingly calm. The human ship arrived quietly, escorted by Noctir war vessels that looked more like shadows than metal. Inside the human delegation ship, tension filled the air. Elias Ward stood near the back of the observation deck, hands folded, eyes steady. He was not a diplomat or soldier. He was a systems engineer, chosen because humans always brought someone who could fix things when everything broke. Elias had grown up on a frontier colony. He was used to being overlooked. That suited him fine. The delegation leader spoke about protocol, about respect, about how humans must avoid offense at all costs. Elias listened but did not speak. He was watching the planet below. Noctir looked alive in a way that made him uneasy. The cities glowed faintly under the clouds, connected by thin lines of light. It felt less like a world and more like a single massive creature breathing in the dark. When they landed, they were taken to the Citadel. The Hall of Assembly was vast, built from black crystal and metal that reflected faces like dark mirrors. Representatives of dozens of species were already present. Some were armored giants. Others floated, shimmered, or pulsed with light. Humans stood out because they looked so ordinary. Elias stood behind the main speakers, exactly where he expected to remain unnoticed. Then the Queen entered. The room fell silent. Queen Violia did not need guards to announce her presence. She moved like the dark itself made space for her. Her skin was pale, almost silver, her eyes deep red, glowing faintly. She wore no crown, yet everyone knew she ruled. She sat upon the throne, and only then did the council breathe again. Diplomats spoke. Words about alliances, trade routes, border conflicts. Elias only half listened. He felt something strange in the air, like pressure before a storm. Then it happened. Queen Violia's gaze shifted, not to the diplomats, not to the loudest or strongest presence. Her eyes stopped on Elias. At first he thought it was an accident. He lowered his eyes, then looked again. She was still watching him. The pressure in the room changed. The Queen slowly stood. "This one," she said, her voice calm but carrying through the hall without effort. Gasps echoed, eyes turned. Elias felt every gaze burn into him. "The human," the Queen continued. "He is mine," the hall erupted. Voices shouted in different languages, some in anger, some in shock, some in fear. Human diplomats froze, unsure whether to protest or kneel. Elias felt his heart pound, but he did not run. "What does this mean?" one alien ambassador demanded. The Queen raised a single hand and silence returned. "In my culture," she said, "a claim is sacred. This human has awakened an ancient bond. He will be my mate." The words struck like a weapon. The human delegation panicked. This was not in any protocol. A human bound to a vampire alien queen could destroy every balance the galaxy knew. Elias felt the weight of history settle on his shoulders, even though he had no idea how it happened. He was escorted from the hall not by force, but by silent guards who treated him with careful respect. The doors closed behind him, sealing the council in chaos. He was taken through long corridors into the heart of the Citadel. Queen Violia waited for him in a chamber filled with dim red light. She stood alone. "You are not afraid," she said. "I am," Elias answered honestly, "but fear doesn't help." Her eyes studied him with intense focus. "That response is rare." "I didn't choose this," he said carefully. "No," she replied. "But neither did I," she explained what had happened. Her species could sense life energy patterns. Most races felt predictable, stable, locked into themselves. Humans were different. Their energy shifted constantly. Fear, hope, anger, love, all flowing and changing. Elia's, without knowing, had resonated with something ancient in her species, a forgotten echo of survival and adaptation. "You remind us of what we lost," she said. "The ability to change." Elias listened. He did not interrupt. He realized this was not about romance or desire. This was about survival. Still, he asked the question that mattered most. "What happens to me now?" "You will stay," she said. "As my claimed partner, you will be protected." "And if I refuse?" The queen paused. For the first time, something like uncertainty crossed her face. "Then the galaxy will tear you apart to prevent what you represent." Elias understood. His life had already changed. There was no safe path back. As days passed, Elias learned about Noctir. The Bloodborne lived long lives but feared emotional connection. They ruled through control, not trust. Their empire was strong but rigid. Elias saw cracks beneath the surface. He noticed how advisors feared speaking freely, how innovation was slow, how the queen carried the weight of centuries alone. Enemies were watching, other species whispered. A human bonded to the queen meant unpredictable power. Some believed humans would weaken her. Others feared humans would strengthen her too much. Assassination attempts were planned. Fleets repositioned quietly. Elias felt it even before he was told. Something was coming. Late one cycle, standing on a balcony overlooking the dark city, Elias realized the truth. The queen had not chosen him because he was special. She had chosen him because he was human. And humanity, underestimated and overlooked, might change the fate of an empire that believed itself eternal. Far across the stars, war calculations shifted. And on Noctir, a quiet engineer prepared to face a future that no human had ever imagined. The silence over Noctir did not mean peace. Elias felt it in the way the city lights pulsed beneath the clouds, too steady, too controlled, like a heart beating slower on purpose. The queen's palace was calm, but the galaxy beyond it was not. Messages arrived every cycle. Some were polite warnings, others were threats wrapped in careful words. A human standing beside the vampire alien queen had shaken old fears. Queen Violia felt it too. She did not sleep often, but when she did, her dreams were restless. Elias noticed the change in her posture, the way her gaze lingered on distant stars longer than before. She carried the weight of an empire that feared change more than war. Elias had been given freedom to walk the citadel, but every step reminded him he was being watched. Not as a prisoner, not as a guest, but as something unknown. The Bloodborne people did not know what to do with him. Some bowed with forced respect. Others stared with quiet anger. To them he was fragile, short-lived, and dangerous in a way they could not measure. Elias did not try to impress anyone. He observed. He noticed that the Bloodborne fleets were powerful but centralized. Orders flowed from the queen alone. Their ships were strong but predictable. Their tactics relied on fear and overwhelming force. Humans had never had that luxury. Humans survived by adapting, by making plans when there was no time, by trusting people who should not be trusted because there was no other choice. One cycle, Queen Violia summoned Elias to a private chamber overlooking the upper sky. "They are moving," she said calmly. "Who?" Elias asked, though he already knew. "The coalition," she replied. 5 species, they fear what this bond represents. They believe removing you will restore balance." Elias did not flinch. "They think I am the weakness." "Yes." "Then let them," he said. The queen turned to him sharply. "Explain." Elias spoke slowly, choosing words carefully. "They expect you to protect me with brute force. They expect you to react like you always have. That is what they are planning for." "And you suggest I do nothing?" she asked. "I suggest you do something different." That word unsettled her more than any threat. Different. Elias requested access to fleet data, not as a commander, but as an observer. The queen allowed it against her advisors' protests. For the first time in centuries, a human sat in the strategy chamber of Noctir. Elias did not tell them what to do. He asked questions. What happens if command is lost? A fleet passing too close to Noctir's borders. Then, without warning, communication relays went dark. The enemy expected chaos. Instead, they met silence. Elias had suggested decentralizing response authority, small fleets, independent action, trust instead of control. When the first coalition ships crossed into Noctir space, they found empty corridors, sensor ghosts, false signals, traps that did not look like traps. Human tactics were not about power, they were about confusion. Coalition commanders argued among themselves. Their intelligence reports contradicted each other. No clear target appeared. Then Noctir struck, not with overwhelming force but with precision. Fleets appeared where they were least expected. Supply lines vanished. Communication arrays were disabled without a single massive battle. The coalition panicked. They could not understand why their superior numbers meant nothing. Queen Violia watched from the command balcony as reports arrived. For the first time in her long reign, she was not directing every movement. She was trusting. Elias stood beside her, calm, focused. He did not celebrate. Humans learned long ago that victory was never final. A coalition strike team broke through outer defenses, targeting the palace itself. This was their real goal. Elias was with the queen when alarms sounded. Bloodborne guards moved swiftly, forming a protective wall. "Stay behind us," one said. Elias shook his head. "They will expect that." The queen looked at him. "What do you suggest?" "We meet them," he said, "not with force, with truth." The strike team reached the inner hall, weapons raised, tension thick enough to break. Elias stepped forward. "I am human," he said clearly. "And I am not your enemy." The coalition commander hesitated. This was not the battle they planned. "You are a symbol," the commander said. "A threat." Elias nodded. "So were we once, weak, ignored, then useful, then feared." He looked at them, not with anger but understanding. "We don't conquer because we are strong," he continued. "We survive because we learn, and we share what we learn." Queen Violia stepped beside him. "My empire could destroy you," she said, "but I choose not to. Because this human showed me a future where strength does not mean stagnation." The silence stretched. Then the coalition commander lowered their weapon. The battle was already lost. Across the galaxy, news spread quickly. Noctir had not crushed its enemies. It had changed them. Humans were no longer seen as background figures or useful tools. They were catalysts, partners, the species that made ancient empires rethink themselves. In the aftermath, Queen Violia addressed the Interstellar Council. "This human is not my weakness," she declared. "He is proof that survival does not belong to the immortal, but to the adaptable." Elias stood beside her, not elevated, not hidden, just human. Back on Noctir, life slowly shifted. Advisors spoke more freely. Innovation returned. The Bloodborne learned to change without fear. Elias remained, knowing his lifespan was short compared to hers. The queen knew it too. That did not lessen the bond. Humans had always lived knowing time was limited. That knowledge made every choice matter. On a quiet balcony beneath the dark clouds, Queen Violia spoke softly. "You will change us forever," she said. Elias smiled faintly. "That's what humans do. We don't last, but what we leave behind does." Far beyond Noctir, civilizations adjusted their plans. Because somewhere in the dark, a human had stood beside a queen of monsters and reminded the galaxy that the most dangerous species was not the one that lived forever. It was the one that learned faster than fear.